all been used to it by now. To go on ahead on this, my name is Engineer Oluseyi, and we want to bring to the notice of all participants that this session is recorded. And please, if in case you have any question or any concern, feel free to send a chat on the chat box, and that will be responded to. And after the session, if you have any question as regards the topic of today, then the floor will be open for questions to come up, and we can use the raise hand feature to indicate we have a question. And in case you have any other contribution or there's something you think we need to improve, please, we need your recommendations, or we need your contributions, we need your feedback. So you can send that to info@apwen.org. So thank you very much once again, and you're welcome to this session. To go ahead on this, I'm going to invite Engineer Hawa. Engineer Hawa, are you online?
It appears she didn't have a network problem. She's been online for almost 30 minutes. I wonder what happened.
Yeah, I observed that. Okay, she's back.
Okay, yeah. You need to invite her again. I'm sure she doesn't know that you have invited.
Yeah, but I think she's here to activate her microphone.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, okay, she's up now. Engineer Hawa, you've been invited. You're welcome. You can go ahead now. Okay, while she's trying to unmute her mic, we also want to use this opportunity to say thank you to the host of this platform, Loopworks. Loopworks is an IT organization, and they are one short bet that you can go to for any IT solutions required. Thank you very much. Engineer Hawa. Are you there? We can't hear you.
Everyone is the Chief Executive Officer. Okay.
You need to start again, Engineer Hawa. You need to start again.
Hello.
We can hear you now, but we'd like you to take it from the beginning again. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you now. You can hear you now. Go ahead, ma'am.
Boy, I heard you say you can't hear me. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Engineer Hawa Khalil. I'm talking in from Kano. Oluseyi Afolabi is a principal consultant and the Chief Executive Officer of Reservoir and Facilities Solutions Limited, an engineering and geoscience consulting firm backed by her over 35 years of experience in the petroleum sector. The services of the firm include
Like her network has gone really bad.
Yes.
It says her bandwidth is low. Engineer Hawa, we can't hear you again, so we'll ask someone else to take the profile. Engineer Hawa, can you hear?
I will mute our mic now so that
mute our mic so that somebody else can take the profile. Yeah.
Oluseyi Afolabi is principal consultant and CEO of Reservoir and Facilities Solutions Limited. an engineering and geoscience consulting firm.
You can go ahead, ma'am.
Backed by her over 35 years of experience in the petroleum sector, the services of the firm include rejuvenating brownfield oil and gas fields, developing cost-effective project concepts for new fields, providing innovative project financing solutions, and providing peer reviews for existing operational processes. Engineer Oluseyi Afolabi, welcome.
Sorry, Engineer Kadri, I think you don't have the full one.
Yeah, I don't have the full one. So
let me just take that, please.
Can I continue?
So that people can appreciate the person that is speaking. It's very important. Hawa, if you're able to continue, please continue. We would like you to take this.
Can you hear me?
No, your network is really bad. That is the problem we're having. I don't know why it happened like that now, because you read fluently.
Oluseyi Afolabi is a principal consultant and CEO of the Reservoir and Facilities Solutions Limited, an engineering and geoscience consulting firm in the petroleum sector. The services of the firm include rejuvenating brownfield oil and gas fields, developing cost-effective project concepts for new fields, providing innovative project financial solutions, and providing peer reviews for existing operational processes. Sheyi retired from the board of the 3 ExxonMobil upstream companies in Nigeria as Executive Director, Commercial and New Business Development on April 1st, 2017. She was the only female on the 8-man board for a period of 5 years. As ED Commercial, she led all commercial and regulatory negotiations and discussions with the NNPC, the Department of Petroleum Resources, the Nigerian National Assembly, and with several companies interested in doing business with ExxonMobil. Prior to this, Sheyi held several key technical and managerial positions in ExxonMobil and worked on several projects in Nigeria, China, Papua New Guinea, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, and the Gulf of Mexico, with a total project portfolio value in excess of $20 billion. Sheyi is a passionate mentor of young professionals, particularly females, to foster the much-needed gender balance required in effective global development. She had met and participated alongside several female world leaders, such as Cherie Blair, Michelle Obama, and Laura Bush in female empowerment initiatives. She holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Lagos, Akoka. She is married to Chief Tunde Afolabi, and they are blessed by the Almighty God with children. I present to you a seasoned professional in the field of oil and gas. The floor is yours, madam.
Thank you very much, Engineer Awa, and thank you, Afuen President and the executive. I'm very glad to be on this forum this morning. Engineer Kadri, thanks for all the behind the scenes work. I really appreciate the opportunity. And without taking too much time, I would like to share my screen to go into the presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be an interesting discussion, and I'm looking forward to it being a lot of feedback to me. Once again, I'm happy to be here. And I thank the Upwen e-learning platform for inviting me. So the topic that I wanted us to talk about this morning is the future of oil and gas. And I'll start off with a question because that's the way you think about things like this when you start thinking about the future. So the future, who can really predict the future? And how accurate can our predictions be? Did any one of us actually predict that in 2020, there will be a virus that is named COVID-19 that would alter our existence the way it has done in the last 6 months, and even have what you would consider an unprecedented negative impact on global economy? For the first time in my life, I actually saw oil go to sub-$0 per barrel, which was a computer glitch because there was oversupply and there was very little demand. So none of us could have predicted it. So I dare to say this morning that the future can only be talked about in the context of today's events. And as a reservoir engineer, I've learned to know that the prediction of the future depends on what has happened in the past, what is going on now, and then you can begin to project. So the future can only be talked about in the context of today's events, the actions and the reactions of everyone to the events. That then forces you to think or influence your thought process. For now, we can all see what we've actually decided to do and evolve into, which is the e-learning platforms. Zoom has benefited tremendously from COVID-19 because everyone now is on virtual communication. So no one really can predict the future except when you think about in the context of today's events and actions and reactions. So why talk about the future of oil and gas? There are 4 reasons why I feel that people talk about oil and gas a lot. First and foremost, crude oil is the most popularly globally traded commodity. We move about 81 million barrels of oil every day out of the ground. We produce that much. The 5 big companies, and 2 of which are Chinese-based companies, have an annual revenue of over $1.79 trillion. Crude oil contributes about 50% of global GDP, about 70% of export earnings, for an average of 70% for those countries that export it. Nigeria is our #1 export earner. It contributes about 90% of our export earnings. And when you consider jobs, most people think, and it is true, that the oil and gas jobs are the highest paying jobs across different sectors. So the #2 reason is the impact on humanity. We've heard so much about climate change, and now everyone is talking about oil and gas as dirty oil, dirty source of energy. And we're thinking renewables, we're thinking solar, we're thinking wind, we're thinking all kinds of things, anything else but oil and gas. It's got a lot of socio-economic impact. For now, our power is generated from oil. And so the world is talking, let's get cleaner, let's develop cleaner sources of energy. So there's a lot of discussion about what would happen to oil and gas in the future. The third thing is the price and market volatility of oil. Even though there's a lot of dollars that people see in the oil trading, I talked about 1.8 trillion annual revenue for the big 5, and that's not just all of them, all the oil companies. The stock market goes crazy when things happen, like COVID-19 happened and the price of oil tanked, and everywhere investments tanked, all kinds of things are affected. So we talk about the future of oil and gas because of the impact it has on people and the environment that we live in. The #4 reason is that it's a depletable resource. Right now, we've got you know, about 1.8 or so trillion proven reserves, which we call the P1 category as of 2018. When we think about how much we produce and how much we utilize a day, you've got about 58 years left on a global basis. 200 TCM proven reserves of gas. Most of it is being flared in Nigeria, and we're always talking about how we can fully utilize it. But that also gives us about 52 years, the proven reserves of gas, 52 years of production when we have to convert it to usable gas. So that's why we talk about where is oil going? What's going to happen? Are we going to dump oil? These are kind of the things that come into people's minds when they talk about oil and gas. And for Nigeria, this is our key export earner. So what are we going to do if the whole world says they're not using oil anymore? The next chart that I present to you is the 2019 energy outlook that's presented by BP and British Petroleum. And I have three charts to my right. The three charts, one shows the end user sector, which shows what's going to happen in the future up to 2040, you know, for transport industry, non-combustion, utilization, and then buildings. And the next chart shows the utilization of energy and the demand of it by region. The next chart, the third chart, is the fuels. So all end users sectors will see a positive growth, as you can see from the first chart. It's a growth. So energy is still required. The growth in energy demands are mostly from fast-growing economies. And when I see India and China, then I ask myself, where's Africa? I think Africa is understated. And I mean, somehow we have to see the economy of Africa growing with time, actually beyond this. And that is where we engineers come in. In the third chart, you see that natural gas grows much faster than oil or coal, and that's because people are leaning more towards cleaner sources of energy. The energy supply by 2040 will be the most diversified in the world. You can see how renewables have grown in terms of the energy utilization. We see that around 2030, demand for oil kind of flattens out, and we see growth in the renewables. However, the price of these energy sources will be the key determinant. So if oil can be cheaper, or oil and gas can be cheaper than renewables, or hydro, or nuclear, or coal, then it will continue to have its pride of place. I wanted to share this chart just to give a feel for where the oil is and where, you know, proven reserves are as of today. This chart dates back to about 2009. So things are depleted, but I can tell you that all over Africa, we're finding oil almost everywhere. Even countries that never thought they had oil now are finding oil as well. But if you look at this chart, you'll see that the most reserves are in the Middle East and also in Africa. Africa shows 99 years, Middle East 299 years. So how can we begin to talk about dumping a reserve that is, or a resource that is available, you know, in really large amounts? Now, I begin to get a bit controversial when I talk about, look at Europe and look at Asia, Oceania. They don't have as much oil and gas anymore. In fact, the next chart I will show you probably tells you why some of the European countries are pushing for other sources of energy. So this chart shows the countries with the most installed solar energy in megawatts, and we see that is in Germany. Germany currently imports 77% of its oil consumption from Russia. Desire for energy security. And so what else can we do instead of always importing this commodity that we can't predict, that we have reliant on other people to provide for us? And that's really, I think, why there's a lot of push in Europe and in other countries that don't have oil as a natural resource to other sources of energy. I understand the story and the desire for climate change, and quite a lot of people might say because I am an ex-product of a big major, that's why I feel that there is no climate change. I believe that there's climate change, but it's not caused only by oil and gas. It is actually caused by a lot of other factors, which we can talk about towards the end of the presentation. So Nigeria, as our country, has resources to compete in the global market. And so what's the future for us? I think we should continue to develop the resource that is naturally available to us and fully utilize it. The next chart just kind of brings to mind what I think as a community, a country that has been blessed by this resource, we should do. And I think is delivering the full value chain of oil and gas. The oil and gas value chain starts with discovering the fields, but ends with providing products to end consumers. Our refineries are in a deplorable state. They're actually working way below capacity. The petrochemical plants are working, but they're way below capacity. For a country that has 200 million citizens, I think we can do a lot more utilizing this God-given resource within our country by exploiting the full value. Oil and gas is in every area of our lives. You need it for your fertilizers. You need it in the pharmaceuticals. And even in this COVID-19 situation, you'll be surprised how much of the components of the famous N95 mask is based, is from petrochemical products. There's petroleum everywhere in your home. You'll be surprised how much of the things around you, even for us ladies and gentlemen, that's, our buttons are petrochemical products, the buttons on our clothes. Everywhere we see petrochemicals. And so when people say we need to junk it, we need to move on to other types of energy, I'm asking the question, why? When you have a God-given resource, you're just not fully utilizing it. The gas resources in Nigeria have not been fully exploited yet. We flare tremendous amount of gas. Gas to power is urgently required. We know what our power situation is in Nigeria. And so we need to think about things to ensure that we are able to produce enough power that actually lights up our whole country. I think we can do it. So I just show this chart to tell you that there's an inexhaustible list of oil and gas products and its derivatives around. Even your candles, your football for children, the shoes, everything is a derivative of oil and gas. So do you junk such an item? So in terms of conclusion, I'll say the future of oil and gas is bright. As a country, we need to explore the full benefit of it. Transportation and electricity generation will be a mix of fossil fuel and renewables. However, I have a red flag when I talk about the solar energy batteries, because no one has started talking about the full cycle of solar energy batteries. How are we going to dispose it in the future? What we're doing, even with our small lithium batteries now, is not the way to dispose batteries. And now when you have bigger battery packs to dispose of and you just dump it on the floor and the lithium starts seeping into the groundwater, I don't want to imagine what environmental impact that would have. The manufacturing industry demand will continue to mirror the population growth and lifestyle improvements. So as more people actually demand better lifestyle, you would see that petrochemical products are utilized more. The construction industry also, there are all kinds of things that we can do now with plastics because they are easier to manage and they are more malleable. So Nigerian engineers, should exploit the full hydrocarbon chain. There are various business and job opportunities within the oil and gas sector, and we all just need to start thinking out of the box. How can I help in actually exploring and exploiting the full value chain? So once again, I say thank you to the President and ESCO of APWEN for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. And I'm open for questions and answers. And this next chart just shows some of the areas where some of the materials I've shared with you this morning came from, to avoid any form of copyright. So I'm open now to conversations, discussions.
Thank you very much, Ma. It's a very short, straight to the point presentation. I'm sure we have individuals in here who have questions, suggestions, who want to contribute to this as well. Like I said earlier, please use the raise hand feature button to indicate if you have any question. And in case you don't have a good quality network connectivity in your locality, you can as well just put the question or the comment in the chat box and I will read it out. Thank you very much. So go ahead, we have Engineer Innocent, UKGIN. You can unmute yourself and speak, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. This is very, very, I would say, very enlightening. The perspective Madam brought is indisputable, the right way to go. I have rather a comment and also a question. From your words of experience, I see we need to look at this probably from a different perspective. We might end up with a different future. The COVID-19 had actually brought a new challenge to the industry. Because before we can talk about sustainability, we will ask ourselves, in the midst of the energy demand of the world and cost of producing energy, if we don't have an energy mix, I think none of us is in denial about the net carbon footprint or what we want to see to ensure that we live a healthier life, with less pollution. I agree. I think you touched on it. The sorts of contaminants is not strictly from petroleum products. And I think the narrative clearly based on the reserve across the world suggests that there is almost a campaign to blackmail, those who still have reserve, the Middle East and Africa, and prevent them from actually exploiting those resources. I think it was clear from your presentation, and that's a fact. But I think the bit that really you've expatiated on that we need to take very seriously as a country is around gasification for domestic use. It's so appalling that the refineries are not working. But in terms of our GDP and what should actually mobilize the resources that we need to unleash, and deal with the poverty issue we have, we've not even scratched the surface. We are still carrying containers for gas in 21st century. Everywhere else, gas has a gas grid, and you can imagine if government recognizes that just looking at how to create hubs and create entry point for people to offtake gas across, the geopolitical region of the country, what that will unleash on the economy in terms of job creation, in terms of value chain, and also the convenience and safety aspect. So we really have not even started. So there is a lot that we can do. And again, the issue around affordability, are people really willing to pay for power? If we get into power discussion about using gas for power, all this discussion we're talking about 5 megawatts, 5,000 megawatts disappears completely. Compare us to South Africa, for instance. So you really have challenged us as engineers, and I think for us to keep mourning and not actually helping in the influencing policy decisions, we have no one to blame. Actually bring our issues right in the corridors of power and make a difference, and to be able to help each and every one of us. But my question goes back to, given your wealth of experience, what I'm struggling with is, how can we actually create a different narrative rather than always being either in denial or complain? How can we as a body, or even those that at least could talk to different set of people, begin to earn a seat on the table to be able to change the narrative in Nigeria? Because we are talking to ourselves, but we need to take it more to the policy makers who can actually listen to us and be able to see if we have a paradigm shift for what we're doing right now.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ikeji. You're speaking my mind. And because I come from the private sector, and I've had to work a lot with government, I've come to realize that we just give excuses when we say government, 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 government. I don't think that we as an engineering community has actually sat down to structure and to come up with a bankable idea that we can bring forward. We've allowed government to run the country, whereas we as engineers who are in the proactive profession, the engineers are supposed to change the lifestyle and even make the lifestyle of people better. But we have actually relied more on government to tell us what to do. And I would ask the question, how many engineers are in government? When I look around, the most important sectors of our economy today, are they being run by engineers? Are the ministers engineers? No. So I believe a body like APWEN, and this is really where the crux of the matter is, NSC, APWEN, all of us, Chemical Engineers Society, electrical engineers, we need to sit down and craft a bankable idea that we know would work and present that to government. I mean, like my profile said, I have had opportunities to work with many NNPC officials, National Assembly, and when we bring ideas as an investor and they see that that idea is really in the benefit of the country, they approve it. But I think as Nigerians, we just like to defer everything back to government. And I would say that it's about time that an organization like ours, start to look at opportunities that are bankable, and we bring it together, we go forward with it to government, and then even consider taking it to a bank to support us, because we have the skills and we need to start using our skills to make our nation a better place.
Thank you very much, Ma. We have Engineer Larry Hode. You can unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mrs. Oluseyi Afolabi. Thank you for the very deep insight from your vast experience in the industry. You will agree with me, mine is a comment, you agree with me that in your younger days as a reservoir engineer, you probably went to the field, you saw crude oils with your own eyes. You can feel it, you can touch it. And same with my experience, you come back home and the kids, you drive the kids to a gas station and they say there's no fuel. And the kids are wondering, you produce this and you don't get it. It's not available to you. And you struggle to explain all the politics and all the economics of how to get oil from the ground to the home. That is what has plagued our nation. And I will tell you why also there are reservations and people are fighting oil locally and internationally. You hit one of them and you hit it very clear, Germany. I would say if you don't have something and you are innovative enough, you will try as much as possible to de-emphasize what you don't have. If you can generate, you can find a way to generate the equivalent energy. But in Nigeria, we have, experts have said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have an island of oil in a sea of gas. And recently, in few years now, in the past few years now, we have tried to walk through that to the extent that recently the federal government flagged off a $2.8 billion pipeline from Ajaokuta to Kaduna to Kano. That is a 614, I'm a pipeline engineer, 614 kilometer pipeline. That means opportunity in the oil and gas to provide jobs, to generate, to boost the economy, and also to cause people to de-emphasize on other areas. Because when you go to people in government, for example, the reason they buy, they fight against oil and gas is that they believe that the money goes to the pocket of a few people, and they believe that it is not spread. They believe that a few people have access to oil contracts and all of that. So it becomes very difficult when you hear people, legislations come in, we want to quickly jump on the legislation to say oil and gas is a problem. That is one aspect. The other thing I want to talk about is that who walks away from 117 billion barrel or is it trillion, you said, for 99 years still on the ground? It's true. But the problem has been management, the management of our resources, the management of this oil and gas. How have we managed it? And that is why a lot of people are showing a lot of disinterest, because they feel that the monies, the revenue generated goes into the pockets of a few. Thanks, ma'am.
I couldn't agree with you more, but what I am advocating for and challenging this group, first and foremost, like I asked earlier on, how many engineers are in politics? How many engineers are in government? And when they're in government, where are they in government? I'm sure that if the country announces somebody who is not a doctor as the provost of Luth, or even as the Minister of Health, people will scream. But we engineers allow Ministry of Power to be run by non-engineers, Ministry of Petroleum Resources to be run by non-engineers. So it is a challenge to all of us. Personally, I'm not interested in politics, but if there are people that are, as engineers, we should support them. And even if we're not in politics, I would say that we've come together as a very strong pressure group beyond our subscriptions to these societies, beyond our just regular meetings and talking. We need to back our talk with actions. You talked about the pipeline. Who would be the contractor on that pipeline? You're a pipeline engineer. How has NSC or APWEN actually said to government, 2.8 billion for 614 million barrels? Is that benchmarked? Are we as engineers stepping up to the plate and making the change that we need to make? That is the crux of this discussion, that we as engineers need to step up to the plate for Nigeria to become that country that we are looking forward to. for us to be able to tell our children that this resource that is in the ground, that I was reservoir engineer for, that sits in the tank. This is how you take it from, you know, my IT was in the Port Harcourt refinery in Eleme in 1983. And at that time, I did not see expatriates in that refinery. It was run by Nigerians. We did turnaround maintenance, we did things. But today, what has happened? And as engineers, we cannot sit back and just watch the country continue to just turn on itself and all we do is just talk, 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 talk. We need to start putting action behind our talk. And that's what I'm actually advocating for in this presentation.
Thank you very much, Ma. I can see we have Engineer Suki Dauda Sule, but before you speak, I would just like to read a question from Engineer Kadri. Our question goes thus: how do we change the financial story because bankable ideas seem impossible with the present financial institutions?
Okay. And so one of the things I'll draw on is again on my commercial background. The most important thing is that the idea really has a full value chain delivery. So I'm going to spend your money, the financial institution's money, and I am going to be able to recover that money because banks are interested in being able to get their money back with interest. So I am not saying that it's not tough to go into a bank and just present an idea, but that idea needs to be well thought through and needs to have the, you know, full delivery of returns on investment. So as engineers, at times, we tend to just have ideas, but we have not actually thought about the full return on investment. When you have an idea that is not going to provide profit, who is going to back that up? So we can change that financial story by making sure that what we are presenting actually has a good return on investment. And everything, most things do, especially when we consider the population of our country. The citizens are crying out. I mean, this whole COVID situation, we don't even know how many people are living in places we don't know. I mean, it was so difficult for government to decide how to share palliatives, how to do things, because they don't know. The population is wrong, everything is wrong. You know, there's so many things that we can do. And I think, you know, as we come together and we start to really look at those ideas and we leverage on each other's skills and experiences, I believe that we can change that financial story. It is most of the time, if you cannot demonstrate to someone that you are going to make profit from this idea, that it's difficult for them to want to give you money to do
it. So thank you very much, Ma. Engineer Suki Dauda, you can unmute and speak now.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you very much, Ma, for the presentation. It was concise and straight to the point. And I think some of the things that I wanted to ask have been addressed. I have one more question. So again, indeed, the skills, we don't have a dearth of skills. That's very clear. Even this presentation demonstrates that. Then you've also talked about the fact that, you know, having a bankable idea. And I think one of the things that we need engineers more than ever before now to have in terms of skill set, it's entrepreneurial skills. And there's a bit of a shortage of that, and we need to do a bit more on that. But the bottom line is politics. And we don't have to be politicians, but we have to know how to play the game. Because as long as we don't, we're not really going to go very far. Having engineers in government helps, but we can't even bank on that as well. Because for instance, ministers are political appointees. They don't necessarily have to be engineers. But going back to the bottom line, you've mentioned something. We don't want to just talk, and that's really my question. So, what in your mind specifically, you know, could be done from this meeting as a measurable objective, you know, to take this discussion forward, you know, so that we don't just have a nice meeting and it ends here. You know, for instance, you know, Fashola is not an engineer, we know, but I think he's kind of an open-minded person. So could Apwen, for instance, even take this presentation or seek audience with him and have a chat with him on this? You know, so the question is, what do you think we can do specifically, a measurable thing that can be done from this discussion?
Thank you very much, Engineer Saki. There's a lot that can be done from this presentation alone. So, like I said, first and foremost, Apwen executive can have a discussion with the president, with the Minister of Power to say, look, we know that we have abundance of gas, so we want to start working either with you or with the discos or with the gencos, because I have, or even with the transmission company. From everything I've read about the power situation in Nigeria, and you know, I was very privy to actually some initiatives by government to get the oil and gas companies to build power plants, and there were so many things that stopped it along the way. And most of it were always on securitization of my funds. If I bring money in, would I be able to take my money out? Would I be able to actually make profit? For as long as we're always thinking about, what's our favorite word for petrol, subsidies. For as long as we forever think about subsidies and subsidizing the larger populace, then things are not bankable, because the price that you want to sell is below the price of my cost. But if we're able to say, let's determine how you can make this profitable. So I'll use the example of power. There are places, and I live in Lagos, so there are places in Lagos where people are willing to pay for 24-hour power, and you know, at a price that is better than what they're paying for their diesel. Because first and foremost, with the diesel generation, you are actually affecting the environment. You're paying so much money for your diesel. So if I could get gas to power at a particular tariff, and I think government eventually got up to it when they said, oh, willing buyer, willing seller, you know, or willing seller, willing buyer initiative. But I want to light up the whole country. So I still need to provide power to other places, because that's really where the population is. I want to provide power to the vulcanizer, to the market woman, to the hairdresser. Do I even know how much power those people use? So for me, as an organization, as the organization of engineers, let's begin to form maybe small teams amongst ourselves, small multidisciplinary teams that will come together and decide, this is what we want to do for this area. Let's understand what their issues are. Let's start even with just one house. Take one house that is densely populated. The problem that they have is that people are always tapping each other's electricity. Let's try to understand why, what is going on, and how much power they really require. Let's start to bring some sanity into the environment. And once we are able to understand, not stay in our own little corners and just read what we read in newspapers or make our own projections, but actually go out and start to meet with people and understand what the environmental issues are first, and then we can bring engineering solutions to surface. So there's a lot for us to do. And I believe that we just need to first, in my mind, create those multidisciplinary teams by street, by house, or whatever we want to decide. But I think it is something that APWEN and NSC should look at as our next level of engagement, because we have to be able to talk articulately. We cannot just sit down with somebody and try to impress on them that they need to do something when we ourselves cannot fully express what they need to do. So I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, yes, a lot of sense. Thank you very much, Ma. Okay, we have Engineer Titi Olide. Go ahead, unmute yourself and speak. Then after that, we'll have Engineer Funlayo Kajo.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to APWEN for this for the e-learning platform, and thank you, Ma, for your very enlightening presentation. So, I mean, there was a lot of, I mean, it was quite eye-opening, particularly when you talked about, you know, the number of years that are left, particularly for Africa and the Middle East, and of course, I guess the narrative that is being pushed, it makes perfect sense, as we've mentioned before, that, you know, if you haven't got something, you have to make it look like, you know, what you have got is the, you know, the best thing since sliced bread. But as well, I think that, and I agree with you, you mentioned something about we don't know how environmentally friendly lithium batteries are as well. You know, it's renewable energy is being pushed as the next best thing, but I think just as the way fossil fuels were also, they obviously have their advantages in terms of, you know, how easy it is for them to as a carrier for energy and all of that, but we didn't start talking about the adverse effects until later on, and I feel like that's the same thing that we're going to have with renewable energy. I mean, I was reading an article too recently about how you know, everyone's talking about artificial intelligence and all of that, and how all these computers and everything are actually going to increase our carbon emissions as well. So, you know, these are things that we should be talking about in its entirety. And you've also touched on that in terms of, like, we don't have data, and we're not, we're not using this data to look at things holistically. So I think it was very, very eye-opening. And like you said, they've mentioned that, you know, oil and gas is dirty oil now and all of that. But if you look at the emissions, if you look at the data that has been collected in other parts of the world as well, there are other sectors that are bringing up about a lot of emissions in agriculture or construction and all of that as well. There's lots of emissions going on. So, and then again, as everyone has mentioned, we need to have like this intersection. We can't just stay as engineers. We need to have this. We need to present those ideas articulately to other, like the governments in policies and all of that, because that's how we are able to then effect that change. I guess my question is now, you know, if we're not looking at how, so of course we've seen that we have this God-given talent and God-given resource, and we can make use of it. So what do you think about maybe including things like carbon capture so that we can use it, but also still helping, you know, reducing our carbon emissions as well? So things like maybe carbon capture or other technologies that are being developed to help in reducing it while still using what we have got, because yeah, again, we can also work with renewable energies and all of that, but why go that way when we also have this available? Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you about, you know, the carbon emissions and the greenhouse gas. But the question that I always ask, and I'm a chemical engineer, and you know, there are all kinds of, I mean, there are also environmental engineers here. Now, I'm looking for cleaner energy, and I'm looking for cleaner combustion, because if we're able to combust well, then the CO2 emission, the CO emission is probably turned more into CO2, because CO, you know that carbon monoxide is not a stable gas. As soon as it comes into the atmosphere, it mixes with the oxygen and it becomes carbon dioxide. Now, the plants need carbon dioxide and they give us back carbon monoxide. Sorry, they give us back oxygen. So as far as I am concerned, there's some value chain between carbon emissions and agriculture. What you don't want is the flaring. So as much as we can reduce our flaring, make our engines have better combustion capability, so more efficient use of that energy source of the fuel, so that what you combust and what you emit is actually carbon dioxide or more of it, so that the plants can use the carbon dioxide and then they can give us back the oxygen. So there's a whole load of things to actually look at in terms of how you reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. And I believe that if we can take care of all the wastages that I see in the industry, like flaring, for instance, and government for a long time has been talking about, since the 80s, have been talking about flare-outs in Nigeria. Why has it not happened? It hasn't happened because it has not been bankable for the IOCs. They did not consider it bankable. We need to understand why it's not bankable. And I have stories that I can tell offline. Because when we inject politics into something that has a long-term benefit to the country, it just, it makes me feel bad that the people that are making these decisions, if they were engineers, and that's why I keep pushing that how many engineers are in politics, that if they were engineers, they would make better decisions because they can see it. One other thing that I would like to kind of like raise with us group of engineers is somehow the way we've been orientated, we just like to see things happen, that I did this and it's working. We don't talk about ourselves. We don't like to say what we did. Somehow there's something innate in engineers about, once I'm an achiever, don't bother to mention it to anybody, I'm good, But I think we need to start learning how to talk about ourselves and the things that we do, so that we can get more appreciation. And I think organizations like APWEN and NSC, again and again, I would say that beyond our coming together and having conferences and paying subscriptions, we should, at this point, be challenging our environment and telling ourselves, the reason I retired from the corporate, I retired, and I say it, I know that this is an open forum, I retired making a lot of money for America. It's time to make money for my country, for Nigeria, because we can. We can, we've got the skills, we've got the talents. We just need to harness it. We need to get together. We need to collaborate more. We need to trust each other more, because I think that's always the problem. When people want to come together to do business, they can't trust each other. There's a trust issue. Once money shows up, people run away with it. We need to go beyond the money. For engineers, I believe that we always know that money is an outcome. Our first orientation is to do the right thing. And then money comes as a result of that. But it's not just money for us, ourselves, but money for the entire country. Looking at our country and seeing that change that we all look forward to. So I just cannot talk enough about collaboration, integrity, trust amongst ourselves, bringing our skills to the table, not minding who is leading it, but everybody supporting it and making sure that it happens the way we want to see it. Thank you.
Yes. Can I go ahead now?
Go ahead, ma.
Yes, thank you. So much has been said. The first point I wanted to make was about gas to energy, gas to power, gas to electricity, and how there's a lot of work being done on making it cleaner. And I would really like us to focus on that. That's the first thing. It can, and you've said so much about it, so I don't want to go on that. The other thing I want to say is to extend my question about financing. Borrowing interest. Assuming you want to do something as a group of Nigerians, you imagine you want to get your money from the financial institutions here. Let me use the renewable energy situation. We had a how to finance your energy project webinar on this same e-learning platform. And at the end of the day, you find that you can't compete. You can't compete with people who can get money from outside. So it's important for us to know what other ways we can raise funds for this project. You can't compete. So coming back to this, imagine you are borrowing money at 20-something%. And then also this, the fact that you have to produce electricity compared to what the government is subsidizing. Those are the two issues which I believe have prevented us, especially in providing electricity to the unreached areas using renewables. Now, I think it would apply to any other solution that we bring. So we really need to look at that. Is there a way where there can be a fund? I know that the Vice President did say there should be an innovation fund. There should be, but even the financial institutions are fighting it. They're not really keying into it. You find that there's no special money, there's no technological fund. And if you look at the budget for this year, if you see the amount of money that was given to technology and even to the Ministry of Science and Tech, you realize that really we need to do something about changing the mindset of the financial institutions. You have brilliant ideas. You cannot borrow at 20-something%. Double digits is through the sky. What are you going to do that is going to be affordable? Maybe someone else has a better idea about this, but I really would like to hear, because this is something which I am very passionate about. And not only me, there are many who just want to get this power out there. We want to reach the unreached places in any way that we can. And gas turbines, you mentioned something about having, someone else, I think it was the first person who made a comment, that we can actually have gas in different regional areas. They're like centers, they're like hubs, we call them hubs, so that we can actually power, even with an energy mix, we can power electricity. Electricity is the first thing that I will talk about. Electricity is something which, when we have it, even our production, our manufacturing, everything will turn around, but we still haven't hit that place. And like you said, we're still flaring gas. So I don't know if there's any way we can affect this, or if you can suggest some ways that we can raise money out of this 20-something digit interest rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Kadri. I'm not in the financial sector, but what I know is that there are a few organizations that government has that can provide maybe funding, but it is very dependent on access. And I know at the beginning of this discussion, I actually saw Engineer Johnson Awoyomi, logging in. I don't know if he's still on the platform. Maybe he can talk a little bit about the Nigerian Content Development Fund. So I know that's maybe low double digits. The African Development Bank, is there, and I hear they are single digits, but somehow I always feel that you're absolutely right about what the banking sector in Nigeria does, and I don't even think that they understand the energy business at all. You know, not even in their support for oil and gas, or, you know, I mean, with the marginal field producers and all that, everyone is dying under their interest rates. So I don't think that financial institutions really understand what the energy business is all about, because it's a long-term business. But I think the financial institutions in Nigeria are used to short-term. You know, you borrow money from me today, by 6 months you bring it back, and you have gone to buy things, you have sold it in Onigo market, and you are back. That they need to change from that. They need to completely, the financial sector needs to change if they want to support the energy space in Nigeria. They need to understand that this is a long-term business. They need to understand that, you know, it takes a while for you to get your money back. And so somehow that restructuring needs to happen. I agree with you completely. There's no way you can do business with that kind of borrowing rates. No, it's very difficult to provide cheap power at those borrowing rates. I totally agree with you. So I don't know if there's anyone on the line who is from a financial institution who can actually throw more light into this.
Thank you very much, Ma. We have Engineer C.I. Okoli. Sir, you can unmute and give your contribution or question.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. And I want to thank the lecturer, Engineer Sheyi, and the APWEM president and the other members of APWEM. Though I have been on and off because of network where I am, I'm trying to get it better. But there are 3 points I want to make. On the bankable idea, I think I flow with the lecturer when she said that engineers in politics and policy-making positions will affect a lot of changes in favor of engineering. We all know that most of the Asian tigers, they are in their hierarchy of government, whether it is by rule of the thumb or by practice, they have engineers up there. They take the decisions. I'm not bringing down any profession, but the truth is that by our training, engineering is a precision science. It is 1 + 1 must always be 2. You can't argue anything less or more. So when an engineer is in position, by his training, which we bring to bear in dispensing that office, you will always notice the difference. So the advocacy which NSC has been taking all these days on the engineers to move into politics, it is encouraging. I support that. Engineers should not think that politics is for dirty people. And well, if it is for dirty people, then don't think of positions when the election is won and lost. You must be there from the beginning to participate. That is why we should encourage all engineers who have flair for politics to move in there. When they move in there, they take the seats on the table where the decisions are taken. That is that. Then the second one is when the lecturer said that, that we have a lot of oil in Nigeria, which has not been developed. And she's wondering why we are talking of another distance. Yes, much as our Nigerian oil has not been developed, the truth is that it is like a relay race. We all know that oil energy is not renewable. and the whole world, even the people that have immeasurable deposits of oil in their countries, are moving or kickstarting the transition, because one day we will find out that the oil is no longer there. If the oil is no longer there, it is not that time that we start to think of the renewable energy that the whole world is talking about. That is that. Then on the borrowing rates, I think we all have to look at the political situation, because no investor will want to come in a place where he is not assured that his investment is guaranteed, even in the long term. And that brings us to why all the people coming to Nigeria to invest are thinking of short-term loans, because you want to do your investments, and before you know what is happening, you carry your money and go. The political, the political and economic situations go together, because one will guarantee the other. And I want to say that the lecture has been so refreshing, and once again, thank you for the thoughtful paper you've presented.
Thank you very much. And,
Thank you, Engineer Okoli. Madam, I just want to crave your, maybe we can take Mr. Ismail Balogun, then you can react. Is that okay, ma'am?
That's fine.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello, sir. We can hear you. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Good afternoon. I just want to make 2 comments and also to ask 1 question. Here in the UK, we are developing alternative energy at a very fast pace. I am involved in electric powered vehicle development, and the emphasis is on alternative energy. I can understand why they're doing that. Now, my question is, how prepared are our engineers in Nigeria to collaborate with engineers outside the country, the Nigerian engineers outside the country? We have people who are pretty much like a foreigner when they come back home. But the trust is the big problem, especially for most people in diaspora. So, in the second one is about the financial support. I can guarantee anyone in Nigeria with a track record that they could get support, they could get loan from the UK. But it's all boiled down to how can we trust each other? How can we get support, most especially from people back home? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I know Engineer Okoli's contribution was more of a comment, and I guess you're speaking the mind of every one of us when it comes to putting engineers in the right positions in government. It is important that we actually are there making policies that definitely favors the engineering profession and brings engineering to bear in the life of the citizens. So we're waiting for the collaboration, and that just kind of like is a good segue to what Engineer Ismail just talked about now. How prepared are the Nigerian engineers? If we were to take a poll on this webinar right now, this discussion, people would say we're prepared. But you touched on a very important thing, which is trust. And somehow, you know, I would want to say, I put myself out there and I say, for an engineer, like Engineer Okole said earlier on, 1 + 1 is always 2. So there's an integrity that comes with our profession, because you can't lie about certain things in the engineering profession. You can't lie. If you lie, you would eventually, I mean, I always say, you know, in practice, that the evil that you do come and live with you. If you design wrongly, you know, when you put it on, then you will know that you have designed it wrongly. You know? So for engineers, I think there's an element of integrity that comes with our profession. And I would say that an organization like Apwen begin to look at how they can combine people like yourself with, you know, maybe someone like Engineer Kadri, who is saying, I want funds, you know, I'm looking for low-digit funds, you know, is there, and that's where I begin to talk about those teams, those multidisciplinary teams that we should come together. And other than even trusting each other on the surface of it, be able to put together binding agreements on each other that makes you to know that you have to actually deliver on your promise. If you say, this is what we want to use the money for, it has to be that way. Otherwise, you will be, you know, prosecuted, you will be charged to court, you'll be named and shamed. You know, we need to get into that space where we're doing things right, because that's the only thing that's going to help us as a country. We cannot continue to live, you know, just based on not trusting each other. We've got to come out and trust each other and hope that things will work. And if they don't work, there's also the name and shame, which is there's a repercussion for you not being trustworthy. So definitely this platform has been beneficial, because if you have financial support that you can provide, and Engineer Kadiri has ideas that she wants to bring to the table to make sure that it becomes reality, I think the conversation should start between the two of you already.
Thank you very much, Ma. It's been a wonderful time having you here. I'm sure there's no other question. No one is raising their hand. So thanks everyone for your contributions and for the time. It's been wonderful having Engineer Mrs. Oluseyi Afolabi, the Principal Consultant, CEO, Reservoir and Facilities Solutions Nigeria Limited. So proceed on these, I will invite the Apwen President, but before I do that, I can see Engineer Joshua Okeje. Let's have that as a last question or comment. Thank you. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you are, but it's afternoon here, so I would say good afternoon from London. My quick question is this. I have come across people who try to take ideas into Nigeria in this sector we're talking about, the energy sector, and sometimes beyond, who have come back to London crying, saying, well, I took this idea there, but it's no longer mine because politicians have stolen it. And they have the funds because, I mean, there are 4 economies in Nigeria, I would normally say. You have the man-to-man economy on the streets. You have the government economy. You have those who deal with foreign investors. And this is the dark side of it. Those who have stashed away our money. So they kind of borrow at 0% interest. They have all the money. So now these guys are saying, you take a business idea. I'll put it this way before I go ahead. My question really is around intellectual property rights. How protected are you when you go in there? Do we have any structures in place, any policies in place? Are you protected by law? If you take your business into Nigeria and somebody steals it and begins to run with it, because sometimes you have to present some of these documents before the bankers who now develop the same ideas in different directions. And I know somebody who is in court right now over such an issue. how do we deal with something like this?
That's a that's a valid point, because one thing that I've seen, and in the last 3 years that I've been out of the corporates and trying to establish a business, I've realized that that intellectual property is not well valued, and it can actually also be stolen. So that's an area that I think things are still open. And I think somehow we need to look at it as engineers ourselves, because this is what we sell. It's really more of our intellectual abilities that we sell to the world. And when someone steals it or uses it and gives no credit back to the person who got it from, it can be painful, and I understand what you're saying. So I think because the judiciary system in Nigeria is still a little lax, and I mean, with due apologies to those who are in the judiciary, but there's a lot that can still be done in that area. The only thing that I can advise is, somehow, I think you should still not be so concerned about it, because I remember I always say in my younger days that if anyone steals my work, they don't know it as well as I do. It was my idea. So I think that should not stop people still bringing ideas into the country. And the only side of things that you also mentioned is the bankability and getting the financial support. But with people like Engineer Ismail that has said he can get financial support, I think amongst ourselves, and there's a lot of I think I've said in answering your question, amongst ourselves, we should get together and begin to structure things properly. And let us also be the first ones on the table that brings our integrity to bear. So if you give integrity, you get integrity back. I think it goes both ways. So intellectual property, that's an area that needs to be looked at. And I think for an upward organization, we can actually explore what is there in the law right now, how are people protected, and if they are not, then that's also another engagement opportunity with government or with the judiciary. So thanks for bringing that up. That's good.
Thank you very much, Ma. Upon President, Engineer Ojelade.
Yeah, thank you very much, Engineer Shegun. And we're also very pleased and thankful to Engineer Afolabi for this great session. I'm not in oil and gas, but I could identify with a few things. When you said oil is not going anywhere except we get some alternative energy that is cheaper. Where I work, I work with the Nigerian Security Printing and Minting, and we produce the nation's currency. And when people were saying, I mean, all this online, and less use of cash and online transfers and all that. Many years ago, there were fears that, is me not going out of business? But every time we're able to say cash is king. I don't know the level of offline banking that we can do, but we'll still continue to use cash. So I quite understand where you are coming from. So we'd like to present you with your certificate, but before we do that, I want to just acknowledge a few people that are here. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Sean Mills. Sean Mills is the sub-Saharan president of WOLI. WOLI is one of the sponsors of one of the events that we have in our mentoring program called the Town and Gown. Sean, I would just like you to say hello before I continue.
Hi, yes, Madam President, thank you very much. Let me just turn my video on if you don't mind.
Yes, I was going to ask you to turn on your video.
There you go. Yes,
Nice
thank you. Thank you for the invite. I've really felt honored to be able to attend this. Madam Speaker, excellent presentation, very comprehensive. And I think it created such an excellent debate this afternoon. I've really enjoyed listening to everybody. The ideas, agree with a lot of what's being said. I think it's the opportunity for Africa. We look at the current situation with the oil price. We shouldn't look at it from a negative perspective. We should look at the opportunity it creates, not just in oil, but in new energies, distributed energy systems. So, really interesting discussions, and I've learned a lot today. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, thank you, Sean, for that. And before you go away, I would like you to know that our association has very strong backing and very strong support from individuals, powerful individuals in our society. First, this association was formed 38 years ago by 6 women. If it was 38 years ago, that gives you an idea of how old those women would be now. Guess what, Sean? 4 or 5 of them they are listening to us now. Our founding president, Engineer Olumaduka, will you please speak, ma? She's almost 80 years. She's on this platform now. Please, will you speak, ma?
Hello, sorry, you broke up there.
Engineer Olumaduka, she's our founding president. She's on the platform now.
I'm not.
Oh, okay, yes, we can see you.
Yes, please unmute me.
We can hear you. You are not muted.
Okay, so I use 2 types of.
I think you have 2 devices beside each other. You need to take off
my
one.
phone and my laptop.
One needs to go off, otherwise we won't be able to hear you.
No, can you mute they are muted on one.
Okay, I wish I knew the other one. The name, what name is it?
Okay, all right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, but we are still hearing the 2 devices.
What I will advise is you can reduce the volume of the other, and then that will sort the echoing. Thank you.
Okay. Is it better?
Yes, much better, ma.
Is it better now?
Yes. It is better. Yes, we can hear you.
Anyway, that's part of an 80-year-old system. You've done a very good job today. Okay. Thanks very much. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Yes, I was actually going to phone you, but it's nice that you are here. And my president, Lola, well done.
Yes, ma'am.
And thanks very much, everybody. I have some questions to ask, but I won't ask them now. Okay. I think maybe we are rounding off.
Okay, yes, thank you.
So it's nice to see everybody. I'm always happy to be at functions like this. And I hope we are going to have some more of them during this lockdown so that we can learn from each other. And Sean, this is my first time of meeting you. Nice to meet you, and thanks for your support, and everybody else who's on the platform today. Thank you. What I would have liked to discuss, maybe I should still say it, is privatization of some of these operating systems. As long as we carry on the way we are doing, we are not going to reach anywhere, because more and more, I believe that we should focus on processing our own oil locally, value added. Right now, it's not working because most of these are government. And the example of the Nigeria LNG is there.
So what we can, in our pressure group, the pressure groups that Engineer Afolabi has mentioned, I think one of the first ones is to try and persuade government to get out of business. As they say, government has no business in business. Now, number two, which maybe touches on Sheyi herself, is the petroleum industry bill, which has been in the National Assembly for over 10 years. I would have liked to know if he knows exactly what is happening to that bill, because that's what we are all waiting for. As long as that bill is not passed, we can't have the type of returns, the type of framework we should have in our oil and gas. So that's, those are the two. I will leave the others. People have touched on all the others. So maybe, if it's possible, the President,
Yes, ma'am.
if Speaker can please talk on these two simple issues, especially the petroleum industry bill.
Okay.
It's something which is very good for Nigeria, but I learned that between our government and the OICs, that bill is not being passed. So I'm sure Sheyi will know something about it. So will you please talk maybe for a minute or whatever. Thank you. Thanks very much for giving me the chance to talk.
Thank you, ma. Engineer Folabi, do you want to say something? She asked you to say something.
Yes. So good afternoon, Ma. It's good to see you again. And the first thing is, I totally agree with you. Government has no business in business. All government should be doing is collecting their taxes and letting the business run, providing the enabling environment that allows business to run. So fully agree with you on that, man. On PIB, I have a long history with PIB. From the first time it was actually put together, when the IOCs looked at it and we realized that the way the structure was put in place, it meant that we would have to pay government 6 cents for every dollar that we make, that we will pay them back. You know, so it was 106% tax to government. So it was a non-starter for the investors at that time. So the IOCs got involved and we started working it. But I think what has actually happened to the PIB is that it's been overtaken by politics. And they've tried all kinds of ways to see if they could manage the politics. First do the physical terms bill, then go back and do another bill. You know, they split it up into 4, they're probably putting it together again. And I think we just have to bite the bullet. The first thing that should be important to government is, does it provide the fiscal regime that keeps our investors in business? That's number one. Does it help our host community? Because that's a big issue. Every other thing is not important. But I think somehow it's just been so locked jam in a lot of politics and all that. For investors, I want to bring my dollar in and I want to make profit from it. Like I've always said when I was in service to my NNPC colleagues, you can't legislate business. Dollar finds itself where dollar is most maximized. For all the investors, they have several options around the world where they can go to. So if Nigeria's fiscal terms and fiscal regime is very bad and they don't see any point doing business in Nigeria, they will find their way and take their dollar where they can take it to. But for us Nigerians, Nigeria is our country and we have nowhere to go. Like Engineer Kadri was saying earlier on, if I'm going to borrow money at such a high premium rate, then I want to do business that allows me to pay back my loan and also make some money. So somehow we just need to, like I've said several times in this presentation, get politics out, get people that really understand what we're trying to achieve in the politics themselves. So engineers need to start knowing how to put themselves forward, get themselves out there to understand what's going on and find a way to manage their political bosses. Because the people in NNPC that are drawing up this bill also are technologists like ourselves. But I think they get involved also in the politics and they think they have to kowtow back to their, politician bosses. But somehow we just have to find a way to explain ourselves in such a way that allows things to move in Nigeria. Because if we stay where we are as a country, we will be left behind.
Thank you, Ma. I would just like to recognize, like I said, Sean, the presence of other founding members of APWEN. Engineer Funlayo Kadri is here, Engineer Maya Adetiba, Engineer Beatrice Oduni, and Engineer Kichi Sigwe. Those are those that are sick. So what I'm telling you is that these great women are still with us and supporting everything that we're doing, and they are watching us to see that we are doing it right. We also have here our past presidents, Engineer Ide Atamusu, and the immediate past president, Engineer Dr. Felicia Agubata, who placed APWEN on such a high pedestal. We're all struggling to meet up. Engineer Oju Okusogwu as well is here, and the vice president of APWEN, Engineer Elizabeth Eteri. And so many people that are just too wonderful. Of course, our friends in diaspora, Engineer Ismail Balogun from the UK, Engineer Patrick Obidoyi and Titioli Liide. We appreciate that you keep joining us, and we thank you for this. So quickly, Engineer Afolabi, I'd like to present this honor code certificate in appreciation of your presentation today.
Thank you.
For an excellent presentation on the future of oil and gas, a webinar offered on our platform, the APWEN e-learning platform. So thank you very much, and we are highly honored. We appreciate your wealth of experience, and we are really happy that you took our time to do this for us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have been on the platform. And I really hope that what we've talked about today forms the basis for a stronger APWEN and a stronger collaboration of engineers worldwide, Nigerian engineers worldwide. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And quickly, I just saw Engineer Andrew Yakubu, the former GMD of NNPC. I learned he was online. I don't know if he's still online.
Yes, thank you. I'm online.
Yes, please, I'd like you to speak. Thank you, sir. This is your industry.
I thought I was sneak in and sneak out, but
no, you can't sneak in.
I must say that I'm highly privileged to have been able to connect to this great program, and
thank you, sir.
I sincerely thank my sister, Mrs. Afolabi, who has been a very good partner in the industry. And I want to associate myself with everything that she presented. There's no doubt that we're in challenging times as far as the oil and gas industry is concerned. But there's also the upside of it, which is, like you said, in the next 30 years, we still have to hold on to oil and gas. And the opportunities that we have out there is to, as much as possible, exploit what we have in the reserves and possibly use the proceeds to also develop other alternative sources of energy. There is no doubt that there's a global drift, and we should not be on the passenger seat. We should also connect. Yes, there is a common denominator that drives investment, which is the return on investment. There's no doubt that some of these alternative sources of energy today are very, very expensive to develop. But we must also find a starting point. One quick suggestion I want to give is, yes, we have the exploitation of utilization and commercialization of gas in our front burner. We started by export-oriented investments. Today, we are beginning to look inwards. For instance, the LPG that we used to export is being plowed back now. We also have the pipeline. We have opportunity to have compressed natural gas and gas filling stations and change our emphasis on PMS to combine energy sources. That will bring down the pressure on PMS, and it will bring down our import. It will constitute an import substitution opportunity for us. Well, the bottom line, I don't have time, but I'll just throw it. Whatever we need to do to develop the industry, we must have cost-reflective tariffs on all commodities that we consume in Nigeria. One thing that is weighing down the industry is cost-reflective tariff. If you want to go into power today, for it to thrive, we must have cost-reflective tariff. So talking about financing, and no financial will come to you if you do not have a locked-in market, and that locked-in market is between 25 to 30 years. So the idea of having short-term loans, and that will not fit into the global scene of investment in the oil and gas. We also need to have a very strong legal framework, and we must also have a stable policy. So policy somersault will not fit into the global scene of oil and gas investment. And even the upcoming energy mix that we're talking about. So what do we do going forward? Yes, I share totally with those who say engineers must participate in policy making. And because we know that the major industry that brings in those who make policies is the politics. So we must also show interest. Having retired for the past 6-7 years, what I have seen is that we must continue to be relevant. Where we have Nigerian society, or the Society of Engineers domiciled in Ministry of Works, that has 6 or 7 directors, and none of those directors is an engineer. The minister is not an engineer. And we have Koren, we have Nigerian Society of Engineers, all domiciled and supervised by those industries. How can we bubble through? Most decisions are made in the political scene as far as policy is concerned. So no matter how brilliant or how articulate our designs are, to move them forward, we need an aggressive participation in the political scene. There's a lot, but let me stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I also want to recognize the presence of the chairman of OVROP, Engineer Kunle Adebayo is online, and our past president, Engineer Patricia Openel-Dili. I want to thank you all for coming. We are delighted, and we really appreciate the honor that you are giving us by tuning on to this all the time. We promise that we'll keep giving you what you have taught us, the legacy you have left for us, and we'll keep making you proud. Thank you very much. So you wanted to send a poll, Engineer Shegun? You can send
Yes, ma'am. I was just waiting for you to conclude on. Okay, so we have a poll. We just need your reaction. It's going to appear on your screen now. Oh, okay. Hello, ma. You might need to do it from your side.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Since my polling session is inactive.
Oh, okay.
I'm surprised because I'm logged in as a user, not as admin. Let me just check quickly.
Okay.
not sure. I don't know what happened to it this time. But I'm not the host, you are.
Yes, but you logged on to it. So once you log on to it, it won't activate the poll except it's just one login.